Good morning, Central Kentucky. This is Sandra Leslie White coming to you live from WJMM Studios here just outside of Lexington, Kentucky. Shouting out to all of you around the country, WJMM.com and Facebook this morning. I want to ask you the question if there's just been sometimes some way that you have just felt the wind blowing you in the wrong direction. We're going to talk about the wind the next couple of days. I talked about the wind last week, but today we're going to talk about it again. And we're going to talk about it in the context of a destructive wind. Have you ever sensed that there's something in you just pulling you toward something destructive in your life? Well, let's talk about that today. We're going to talk about this in Hosea 5:2-4. The title of the message today is Spirit of Harlotry. What does the spirit of harlotry have to do with the winds of destruction? Let's look into Hosea 2 today. Special shout out to Chris Trower. I want to just dedicate this show to Chris. He's been on my show before. He's got a ministry of healing and deliverance here in Lexington, Kentucky. Now meeting on Thursday nights at the previous Wellspring Prayer Center on Harrodsburg Road. So, Chris, this one's for you as we talk about a spirit of harlotry and how we are drawn into it by a destructive wind. So let's listen in now to the Word of God. This is Sandra Leslie White, if you're just tuning in Hosea 5:2-4. New American Standard Version today says this: "And the revolters have gone deep in depravity, but I will chastise all of them. I know Ephraim, and Israel is not hidden from me. For now, O Ephraim, you have played the harlot. Israel has defiled itself. Their deeds will not allow them to return to their God. For a spirit of harlotry is within them, and they do not know the Lord." All right. Again, if you're just tuning in, this is Sandra Leslie White, lifting the veil on the Word of God, going into a deeper revelation, which is the meaning of the title of my show, Lifting the Veil, just revelation, deeper understanding of the Word of God. And this is where we are today in Hosea 5:2-4. Does it sound familiar? In a sense, this again gives, credence or reference, or it's another climatic statement, I'd say, in the book of Hosea, and gets specific to what is going wrong with the people of God in the northern kingdom of Israel there in the latter part of the 8th century BC when Hosea wrote the prophecy. But I want to look again, and I love the way Hosea, ties itself together throughout the book. It is to many of the scholars today, and what I like to say is a living parable of a prophet and his relationship to a wayward wife named Gomer, although we seem to be drifting from his marriage with Gomer at this point and getting really into God's marriage to his people and how wayward we are and how he continues to pursue us. But here we find ourselves within the context of this spirit of harlotry that has seemingly taken over Israel. And when he refers to Ephraim in there, that's one of the 10 tribes that were part of the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom being Judah and Benjamin. But the king Jeroboam came from the tribe of Ephraim. And oftentimes Israel and Ephraim are used interchangeably because Ephraim, the Samaria was in Ephraim. It was sort of the catalyst of the idolatrous worship that was going on and penetrated and infiltrated and ultimately destroyed the entire nation. So when we look, though, at Hosea, and we look at this spirit now of harlotry, which is interesting, first time he's used that phrase, spirit of harlotry. And I know for many of you out there, maybe this is new information for you, that a spirit of something specific as harlotry actually affects God's people, actually infiltrates, actually can get within the presence and person of an individual, and then essentially goes through the family, the community, the nation. So this is a fascinating and fearful verse or collection of verses here, but I want to go back to the foundational verse in Hosea 1, which sets us up for the entire book. And yet, in and throughout Hosea, I often thought that I would end my teaching in Hosea 2, because it seemed to be, the summary of the entire book, chapter 2, which it is in many ways. But there are continuing messages throughout Hosea that are important for us. And today, it's the spirit of harlotry. And it comes from Hosea 1:2, or at least it builds upon or explains, maybe it's a better way to put it. Hosea 1 verse 2. This is sort of the commission of the prophet Hosea. When the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, "Go, take to yourself a wife of harlotry and have children of harlotry, for the land commits flagrant harlotry, forsaking the Lord." All right, so now today we're going to look at this spirit of harlotry. So it seems by implication that this spirit of harlotry has entered into his wife, this wife of harlotry, okay, was Gomer, entered into their children. So here comes the generational sin, the generational problems, goes into your children, and then from there goes into the land. For the land commits flagrant, and then he puts that adjective on the noun harlotry. It's flagrant. The land now is capable. The land, which can mean the physical land, all the way to the people living within the land, the inhabitants, which is clearly what he's referring to here. So we're looking at a progression of starting within your most intimate relationship. Well, for Hosea, it was going to be his wife, Gomer. And then the second tier of influence, your children. And then it goes into your own community or your land or the people around you. So here we go. Let's look carefully at a spirit of harlotry today. Again, I'm in Hosea 5, 2-4. And there are many other things that I could have talked about in these two verses, and you know that about me. One thing I thought about naming the title of the show today was Deep in Depravity. Well, they are that, deep in depravity. But they're deep in depravity because of the spirit of harlotry. And it's continuous throughout the book of Hosea. So let's look at that. Definitions. I'm going to go into this a little bit deeper today in terms of the actual definitions of this word and how it is referred to in the context of Hosea. So let's just look at this today in chapter 5, verse 4. That he's saying that their deeds, which are deep in depravity, all of their idolatrous worship, all of their interactions with pagan gods, all the way to the point of intercourse with the temple prostitutes, of which Gomer perhaps was one of them, and Hosea is married now to her. That was a wild ride for Hosea. Anyway, for a spirit of harlotry is within them. Okay, so their deeds, these deeds, they've gone deep into depravity. Their deeds will not allow them, so they don't give them permission to return to their God. Well, that implies that they once were with their God. But these deeds Don't allow them to return to God because a spirit of harlotry is within them. Okay. If there's any foundation for the ministry of deliverance from evil spirits, we can find it in the latter part of the 8th century BC and going all the way into the ministry of Jesus in the casting out of demons and on into our ministry today of deliverance. So here's an Old Testament reference to a spirit within a people, and it keeps them from returning to God. And even worse than that, they do not know the Lord. Okay, I'm going to repeat the verse. Listen to the digression. Listen to the descent into depravity here in just one verse. Their deeds will not allow them to return to their God, for a spirit of harlotry is within them, and they do not know the Lord. All right, so let's look at these words a little more closely. As I said earlier, I'm going to look at, first of all, spirit. We're going to look at spirit of harlotry in these last few minutes. The spirit there is the same word as used in the last verse of chapter 4, verse 19, the wind. In the Hebrew, that word, wind, is a physical wind that can manifest itself in the physical realm or in the spiritual realm. It can be interposed there. This wind wraps them in its wings. That's a destructive wind. If you want to look at that message, it's on my Facebook page or on my podcast. My Facebook is Sandra Leslie White Ministries. Facebook page, my podcast is Lifting the Veil on Podbean. But that teaching is there. And they'll be ashamed because of their sacrifices. So that wind, that is the same word used in spirit here. So this is a weird wind. This is a weird spirit that is steeped in harlotry. Let's look at that. And this is in the Hebrew now. And I'm going to the word Zanyuing, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, so you Hebrew scholars can contact me. It's a Hebrew masculine noun, which always occurs in the plural form. It comes from 2181, which is a reference to fornicate, to whore, to commit fornications. This is zana. To be a harlot, to play the harlot, to commit adultery, to apostatize, to have intercourse with false gods or foreigners, to seduce. Okay, so this means essentially whoredom, fornication, idolatry, unfaithfulness to the true God, or intercourse with foreigners. And he references business in that context. So today we're looking at this spirit that represents itself as a wind, as a destructive force, air in motion. Something's in motion. These spirits do not remain quiet or sedentary. And it is a specific spirit of harlotry, which is used in Hosea as literal harlotry, as literally having intercourse with prostitutes, which were the temple prostitutes of the day, and also with idolatrous worship, with leaving God, with leaving the worship of Yahweh. So they're combined and they're powerful. And this is a combined plural spirit that is having its way in the nation of Israel. Is it having its way in our nation today? We are going to look into this tomorrow and maybe for the next couple of days as we continue on in this wild wind of destruction. God bless you today. We'll see you tomorrow.